But the senator,
Well,
while
technically.
indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio's 2017 New Year's Eve call-in stream. Since our Christmas Day call-in stream was not terrible, not horrible, didn't sap our will to live, we decided to do it again for New Year's, which is right now. Well, yeah, I guess it's not really New Year's for everybody in this chat, but it is for most of us. So welcome to the call-in stream. If you wish to be in the running to come on the show and talk to us, look in the low bar of the YouTube video, if you're at the YouTube video and it's live, and click on the link to our Discord, and you can join us, and we will sniff you over gently, a little bit of gnawing, figure out if you have something interesting to say, and bring you on so you can say it. I would like to welcome my hosts who came on last minute. Hannah Wallen, Hyper Chicken, who's one of our patrons, was also named Anthony. I didn't dox you there, did I?
No, I'm fine.
No, his name's Phil. You're all right.
Yeah, it's Phil. We're joined by Phil. And, of course, Dr. Random McCann.
Word.
Word. Okay, so is there anything you guys want to talk about before we bring on our first guest? So we do have one waiting. Silence.
How about Halt and Catch Fire?
Oh my god, yes, sure. Let's talk about Halt and Catch Fire.
Oh god.
See you later, guys.
No. We can't talk about Halt and Catch Fire.
I'm kidding.
We'll alienate everyone. Not everybody watches it. In fact, almost nobody watches it. In fact, I think I'm one of the two people who watch it. The second one was me making Mike watch it, which is just really actually pretty hilarious. But it is a good movie. I think they should rename it Halt and Go Your Own Way, because I think it ultimately, I'm going to make the argument that it is a MGTOW, men going their own way manifesto. I'm holding to that.
And on that bombshell.
Do you want at some point? Sorry, what?
Do I want to?
Do you want to talk about 2017 in the year of pop culture or nerd culture?
Oh god.
Or is it not worth it?
Sure, we could do that. Is there any highlights you want to bring up right now?
Well, normally at the end of the year, you get sort of retrospectives of the year for in terms of pop culture, which you can sort of see Kotaku in action as an archive of them. And it fits into two camps of 2017 was the third year in a row that intersectional social justice took over nerd culture and made it good, or it was the year that nerds destroyed intersectional social justice, nerd culture, and that's why we're scum. So it's weird kind of duality.
That is a very interesting duality. So simultaneously, intersectionality has made nerd culture better, but nerd culture has turned around and destroyed intersectionality.
It's all our fault that all the Marvel comics got cancelled.
Not because they sucked.
Yeah, and how they were just.
Are they now using intersectionality as a substitute for the word diversity because their use of the word diversity has destroyed the word
That's
diversity?
the word I should probably use, diversity.
Well, I'm wondering because I've started to hear feminists talk about intersectionality as if it's a religion instead of a phenomenon, and they used to just describe it as this thing affects this person for two progressive stack reasons, and one of them doesn't eliminate the other. That was like the entire original basis of it. Just because you're black doesn't mean that this doesn't also affect you because you're female. It's still sexist, you know. And then when MRA started pointing out, well, that means that you can't say that what happens to black men in the prison system isn't sexism against men. It happens to them because they're men as well. And they gave evidence. And feminists started treating it more and more as sort of a a way to sort out the progressive stack so that, black women are more important than white women, and, various minorities are more important than each other, and so on. And it became sort of a religion instead of this is how you explain that just because it affects you under one category doesn't mean that it eliminates the other categories it affects you under. So I'm wondering now if they're starting to use it as a substitute for diversity.
A substitute for diversity.
Yeah, they basically have gone in, like the word diversity, they've gone in and so, well, every time we say diversity now, people replace it with the word tokenism because, that they see tokenism in it. So now if we use intersectionality.
Yeah, a photo full of white people is not diverse enough. A photo full of black people represents diversity. That's
Yeah.
I've been thinking about intersectionality, and I've said before that I believe it's a way of appropriating victimhood from minority men to women who have no minority status of any sort or any kind of marginalization. Because and the way it works, as far as I can tell, is you start with, for example, black men. Of course, all men are more likely to be targeted by the police for violence, but black men being targeted by the police for violence. And then you say that what black women, by virtue of being women, always have it worse. So you identify any particular way that black men are being persecuted or statistically disadvantaged, and using intersectionality, you determine that black women always have it worse. Even if they don't actually face that disadvantage, they always have it worse by virtue of being women. And then once you do that, once you've started to say that the issue that black men face is actually faced even greater by black women, then there's another aspect of our psychology that comes into play, in which we actually care about something more if it only affects women because they're women. So it gets to the black woman category, and then suddenly it loses the black part of it, and it just becomes women are more affected by this thing. And then from there, it goes to white women, because obviously white women, whatever oppression they face because they're women. If they're not disabled, they're not poor, they don't have any of, a marginalized background. They obviously are, whatever oppression they're facing is solely because they're women. And we care about that more because we care about anything that women face because they're women more than any other category of oppression. It's just psychological. So at that point, the police violence against black men, which might be statistically greater, it might just be a subset of the greater amount of police violence against all men, has become a white, wealthy, cis, heterosexual, Protestant, blue-eyed, blonde, thin woman's issue.
That's also how white women become victims of white women's false accusations against black men.
Yeah, that's what's so unbelievably amazing about all this.
Yeah.
Is you could talk about a black man who's shot because a white woman alleged that he raped her, and somehow through the convoluted process of refining the victimhood that represented
other white women become victim of this.
Refining the victimhood of intersectionality, suddenly white women become victims of their own violence that they put in motion. And it's amazing to me to watch. And it's even more amazing that minority men don't even seem to recognize this is happening.
Some do.
We have an entire system that can excuse any kind of racist, homophobic, transphobic, any kind of violence or marginalization against any group of minority men. It can completely excuse it and not have to look at it or do anything about it. And it's right there, right out plain as day. And it's never called out for what it is. And all it requires is that one little trick, which is women always have it worse. If black women always have it worse than men, you can engage in any kind of racist violence against black men. You could line them up and against a wall and shoot them all, and it wouldn't even register, because black women always have it worse. And as long as they're not facing this type of racism, we don't have to care about it. And that's how all of these groups, these movements, Black Lives Matter, that's how they get neutralized and become nothing but a way of propping up the political aspirations of powerful white women.
Black Lives Matter started out with problems. There were the first thing that they started out with was that they martyred somebody who didn't make a very good martyr, and they had to lie about the circumstances under which he died, in order to use him basically as their martyr, and that screwed everything up in terms of what kind of dialogue they were going to start, and it just went on from there. And that was women starting this. That was something that they didn't think this out very well. They could have had a very important conversation going, and instead, what we have is a conversation on whether or not Black Lives Matter is a legitimate movement. And that's really a shame, because there is a situation where, um, within police forces, and they're really not a monolith. We're talking thousands of police departments that are separate from each other all over the United States. Some of them in big cities, some of them in small towns, some of them are precincts in cities that are separate from other precincts in cities, and different precincts all have different leaders. So we're dealing with a situation here where, yes, there is corruption. It's not universal, but it exists, and it is important to address it. But instead of addressing it, we're busy talking about whether or not Black Lives Matter is a valid movement, and whether or not the hatred that they express for white people takes away from their ability to advocate for people that have been wrongfully shot or wrongfully even just arrested. And that is a real shame, because it is something that needs to be discussed. It's something the men's rights movement has tried to get discussed for years. And it really kind of, in a lot of ways, it hurts to watch this happen.
When I think about it, when I think about the situation, and when I'm done here, I'm going to get Hyper Chicken to start talking about the year review, about all of this pop culture. But when I think about this situation, and I think about men's rights and men's issues, and sometimes I think about how to explain it. And the idea is if you can create a situation in a world in which men are valued by virtue of being human beings too. So us women go and we say, we're going to give men some of the innate social value, the innate belonging that we just seem to have by virtue of being women. And we're going to give that to men. If you do that, if you promote a world in which the innate value of every man is recognized, you are going to create a world in which racism is neutralized, homophobia is neutralized, transphobia is neutralized, marginalization of poor men is neutralized. The epidemic of suicide among white men is neutralized. And all you have to do is care about men as people and give them a human value and say, you deserve this. And all of these issues that feminists say they care about would be neutralized by that simple act of caring about men, regardless if they're black or white or Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Hindu or any particular feature of ethnicity or language or physical ability. Just care about them because they're human, and not to the state where you don't call them out for any kind of issues of individual behavior, but care about them for being human beings. And that would do more to address all of the issues that feminists appropriate for women than constantly harping on how women are worse off made worse off by all of these issues. And we have to focus constantly on women because they're more affected by homophobia. They're more affected by racism. They're more affected by transphobia, even though women aren't actually being killed by these issues. They're not actually being killed by these things. It's men who are being killed by these things, or people, trans women, who aren't recognized as women. They're still seen as men, and they're seen as appropriating an unearned value for themselves. If we actually cared about men, we would be addressing all of these marginalization issues. And it sort of boggles my mind that feminists have managed to appropriate all of these issues of marginalized men and trans women, appropriate all of them, and put them in a context where they're never going to be addressed. They're never going to be changed. They're never going to be challenged. They have no functional way of doing it. They're simply appropriating the vulnerability and appending it to the most privileged class of women in the world so that they can pursue a political agenda. And nobody calls them out on it. How do you think that we are going to solve these issues of trans women being killed, of homophobia, violent homophobia, of racism, if we don't address this idea that men do not have value by virtue of being human, that their only value they have is to, in the case of a men's sexuality, to be sexual with women, and any man who violates that is open for physical abuse. Of course, now if men are sexual with women, they're open for physical abuse. It's coming and going. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out. Go ahead, Hyper Chicken. I can see that you want to speak.
I was just going to say before I went on with what you talked about is that with Black Lives Matter, it was kind of one of the problems. This may seem like a bit of a tangent. One of the problems was it seemed to spring out from universities, which means that it kind of sprung up with black people who really aren't contacted by these issues but feel like they are. They generally come from wealthy backgrounds, and they generally spend all their time talking about rather abstract social theories and not any real solutions or data. They just sort of abstract top-down political theories, which seem to be right in line with what you said, just pursuing a political agenda by people who already have money and position. That they go around talking about how black people can't be racist because they've redefined racism as a way of saying that the more power that they have, the less racist the country is by definition of the new term of racism they have. So it kind of was tainted by the fact that it was immediately picked up by people who are doing the same trick and are never going to win it for the reasons you outlined. That every time they play a victim, it immediately gets passed off to the nearest white woman in the room. It becomes Hillary Clinton's bauble, essentially.
Well, let's bring on Dr. Livingstone, I presume, because I believe he has some interesting things to say about France. Would you like to come down into the show channel so you can speak to us, Dr. Livingstone? Do you require me to move you in? I can do that, but it might be shocking. All right, well, I'll just continue to speak while we're waiting for Dr. Livingstone to come into the show channel and say his piece. Oh, you know what? Maybe he doesn't realize that we're actually asking for him to come down. Let me pull him in.
In the meantime, we've got a super chat.
All right.
Hoki Bakisa gives us $10 and says, "How can we expect them to treat men as well as they treat women when they've never stopped to self-reflect upon why women are treated as well as they are, or even that they're even worthy of it?" I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time reflecting on those issues, and thinking about why it is that women are treated better, and all of the attendant issues. But anyway, Dr. Livingstone, I presume, are you able to speak?
I presume I should be.
Okay, great. So you wanted to talk about France.
I can do that, if need be. That's one of the few things I know a bit about.
Okay. So you were saying you can give us a quick rundown on the current situation regarding current issues, men's rights, gender policies, and other such things in France.
Well, yes. It doesn't really get much outside of our borders because very little is reported. I said that quickly, our media is quite insular. There is a language barrier, and it doesn't leak into other networks. So the result is that what happens domestically doesn't get out, and that is relevant to men's rights, as we've had sort of a nice year regarding that. 2018 is not going to be very pretty, in that we have a lot coming in terms of really just odd legislation regarding street harassment, things like that. There's been all sorts of fusses surrounding it. There is a pretty odd-looking law currently in the works in Parliament regarding that, and it's just the usual sort of one-sided narratives you get everywhere, but it's not taking a good turn. The situation was not quite pretty, and it's not getting much better, so just figured it might be of interest to badgers everywhere. Who knows?
So what's going on with this harassment law, street harassment law?
Well, important thing for this is for the few who live, I don't know, on a rock called the American continent or something like this, we've had a new government, several actually, but that's nitpicking. And things are moving quickly. We've had a shift in governance, that sort of thing, and we're dealing with everything being readjusted. And part of this, with our brand new president Macron, is that there was a strange emphasis on equity in the campaign. So it has pushed the age-old question of, are there enough women in parliament, this sort of thing. That's really just standard practice when it comes to intersectionality in a way. But in this specific case, the first year of the mandate had been, if I recall correctly, stated as officially being dedicated to the equality between men and women. And that came with what you would imagine. It had, sorry, a lot of old studies with very spotty methodology resurfaced to show that anywhere between 90 to 100% of women were victims of harassment in transport or in the street, this sort of thing. And of course, action had to be taken. So all sorts of measures were discussed, and now the text is in the pipes. I'm not sure where it currently is. I'm not entirely up to date regarding it. I believe it's still in consultation, but it's not looking very good, as it's mainly trying to regulate, to possibly penalize reported offenses that cannot be clearly defined. It's always going to be the problem when it comes to harassment. You know, how do you legally define something that is harassment, something that is really just a mere passing comment? And as if this sort of muddled ground was not enough, we've had, to back this up, an entire odd campaign on Twitter, which followed by a couple of weeks, I believe, the Weinstein affair that fueled it indirectly with the whole, did you see? Women are really being oppressed everywhere. And it's resulted in an entire sort of viral campaign on Twitter to quote unquote anonymously denounce people who might have harassed women in public. So there is this odd sort of, I don't exactly know how to describe it. It is an odd blend of essentially calling out people without naming them on Twitter by hashtagging, by just throwing around a hashtag and telling stories that may or may not be true, may or may not be exaggerated, in order to, how do they say it again? It's not start a conversation, it's put issues to the public light and show that, yes, women are being harassed everywhere. And it's been quite a fuss on French-speaking Twitter, this entire thing.
It sounds like a Take Back the Night rally. A lot of times that's what happens. They'll describe an incident. They'll say this happened. Then they'll talk about how bad it was, and they'll exaggerate the nature of it and the impact of it without naming the individual. Now, it's not always the case. Sometimes they'll name the individual, and this is students that will do this at the same school the individual goes to. But quite frequently, it was just, one girl after another getting up and saying what happened to them. And a lot of times it was stuff that's like, well, this is not a big deal. This is not anything. They're not all talking about having been raped. They're talking about things like, I was walking down the street and I felt this guy looking at my butt. He was walking, behind me for 3 blocks, and I know the whole time he was looking at my butt, and I was afraid to turn around and confront him. Well, how do you know he was looking at your butt? And if he was, what happened to did he burn a hole in it with his eye rays? And this is the kind of thing that in the 90s led to more and more strict policies in universities. So this sounds like that's what they're pushing for on a public level.
That's essentially what they are doing, and this sort of thing do not come alone. They do not exist in a vacuum. So it was also followed with Weinstein-like accusation, although not on any one of the same magnitude. Mostly TV personalities. Sorry, I can't comment much. I really don't know that much about our TV networks and stuff like that. I've been out of the loop. But named accusation have followed this sort of wave of just storytelling, which is meant to be anonymous, at points sort of slipped out of it and expanded into straight up accusation. And then there came some serious issues. Now, the problem is how much of it is true, and how can we know when there has been the creation of such a climate of lack of scrutiny? I think I'm getting weird with my English, sorry.
Well, ultimately, the end result of a climate of lack of scrutiny will be social chaos. I know Hannah was wanting to speak, so go ahead, speak to that.
Well, I would just point out that that same thing happened on university campuses in the United States too. So this is something feminists have tested and been successful with. And what they end up with is they throw a set of men under the bus. They have this set of accusations. In fact, they on God, what was it? Boston University campus, I believe it was, in 93 or 94, they actually posted a set of young men's pictures on wanted posters, wanted potential rapist, guys that had done absolutely nothing. They were guilty of nothing except for having a penis.
Well, it's sort of what has been happening, but that's one facet of the entire thing. To put on top of all of this, the feminist spheres have been in outrage since the formation of the government, as there has been some weird claim that they had been cheated of their contribution to the movement. For those who don't know, our current president somewhat came out of nowhere, and that's sort of a unique phenomenon, as he managed to create a party out of nothing and bring it to power in a year and a half, basically, with a bit of help from the closest we can get to intersectional association and organization, as these things work differently in France. We can't, for instance, really have interest groups for based on ethnic lines. So feminists were obvious part of the support for this new movement, and in the formation of the government, there was an odd uproar to the fact that the Ministry for Equality and Equal Rights had not been renamed Ministry for Women's Rights, as it had been in its early days in the 60s and 70s under the Fifth Republic, but it had been relegated to a state secretary, that's lower than the ministry, and it had been renamed Ministry to the Equality of Rights between Men and Women. And there had been an outrage regarding the fact that it shouldn't be the purview of this ministry to really deal in the rights of men, as, men already have all the rights, like how we cannot legally demand a paternity test. That's a right we have. But yes, this also, let's say, have the climate where I think we're starting to see this sort of intrusion we had seen in the United States and in the UK seeping into our political climate in a different way, but that's not exactly a good prospect for 2018. And to add to this, the minister at the head of this ministry is not, let's say, she's been controversial.
What you're probably going to see is feminists are going to be pushing for traditionalist men to protect them. That's where this is going to lead, and they're going to appeal not just to like the liberal men out there, the men that might be in the United States referred to as progressives, but they'll start appealing to family-oriented men who have all their lives been oriented towards protecting their wives and their daughters against a harsh outside world and things like that. They'll play on their sympathies for young girls and the fact that they're perceived as incredibly vulnerable, and nobody ever notices that they also have a great deal of psychological power over the people around them because of that vulnerability.
This might not be this easy in this specific case, as this is a logical course of action. I perfectly agree with that, and that's what we're somewhat seeing in
the United that's what States, I would expect.
And that's what has very often been pointed out very rightfully on HBR when it comes to the Islamic world. That's very much how this sort of thing is pushed. But it may not work here because of maybe a local specificity, which is that this sort of domain is mainly exists in the sphere of traditional Catholics. And let's just say they are not going to get favors from progressive types. It's just not possible. They are not going to get favors from feminists. That's
no.
These two are incompatible.
I'm not saying they're going to appeal to progressives. I'm saying they're going to appeal to the conservative end, the family oriented end.
And again, I don't think it's going to be very easy.
You don't think it'll be successful?
It would take some real work to get it to be a success, because this thing do not work well.
Do you think there's still a gynocentric attitude in your society?
I'm not sure I could really make clear statements regarding that, but I would say there definitely are some elements, yes. However, I don't see this sort of alliance working, at least not politically. The current forces in power really have sort of gotten the traditionalist spheres against them during the presidential campaign, the reforms, things like that. It would be hard. It's possible, but I don't really see it happening. We'll see, and hopefully it will be a problem.
Do you know the term? Do you know the term white knighting?
Obviously, yes.
Okay, so do you think that's a fairly common thing among, say, men in positions of responsibility in your area?
In specific cases, I would say that yes, but I don't think I could say that much about it. A lot of it happens in mediatic sphere I just don't care about. It's been happening when it comes to accusation levied at television personalities, and I don't have much patience for that. But yes, it's something that may happen. However, this sort of gender-based white knighting may not work that well, as we've seen with the, let's say, the fact that there were not many gender-based white knighting during the second turn of the presidential campaign, where a woman had been made public enemy #1 because she was not exactly the proper type of woman. I don't have much sympathy for Marine Le Pen, but
regarding the accusations,
they couldn't push that. Regarding the accusations, I think it very well could happen.
Yeah.
The problem is it would need to really turn into properly stated accusations rather than the current climate of just he said, she said, and just
here's the
witch hunting.
Here's the pattern that happened in the United States with that. We saw the accusations, the generalized accusations, the nameless accusations. Those started coming out in the 80s. There started to be. That's when Mary Koss introduced her survey methodology, where they asked women whether they'd experienced a thing, and then they defined that thing as sexual violence, whether the woman felt like it was sexual violence or not, which led to them defining drunk sex as an act of sexual violence against
Yes,
the woman
the
involved, right?
redefinition game, that's a pretty handy
Right, right.
practical tool. It's already been happening in there when it comes to harassment, so that's already one step.
Right.
So we'll
And
have
then
to see about the following, which is trying to precise thing, get the proper people in place in order to enact change in the proper direction, etc., etc. What we've
well,
seen
they
happen
won't have to
recently in
have
democracies.
they won't have to have the proper people in place. They didn't have to have the proper people in place in the United States. What they did was they made this a compelling threat against women as a gender, as a population in the United States, and particularly women college age and younger, girls. So what they had was people able to come in who wanted more government control over interpersonal interactions were able to come into Congress and argue that laws needed to be changed in order to additionally protect women, to increase the protection for women under intimate partner and sexual violence law. And what they achieved there was our federal law for intimate partner and sexual violence was genderless. It was passed in 1984, and it provided shelters. It provided legal standards that just because people are in a relationship doesn't mean it's okay for them to be violent to each other. The cops should respond to violence as violence regardless, that kind of thing. And then in the 90s, in 1994, they passed the Violence Against Women Act, and the Violence Against Women Act has basically been its own little school to prison pipeline, and marriage to prison pipeline, relationship to prison pipeline, since 1994. And it was all achieved starting with, first you make these vague accusations, then you go through and you start naming people, you start throwing specific individuals under the bus, you create the impression of an epidemic of this type of violence, and then the legislators will have to respond. You give them an easy solution that provides greater government control over relationships and the ability to throw more people in jail and then demand funding, and they do it. They vote for it. So that's basically the kind of thing I would advise you to watch out for and start pushing back against with the people around you.
Well, hopefully we can jump one step ahead and get a bit of Duluth model applied into our laws regarding divorce and things like that.
You don't want the Duluth model.
Why would I want that?
No.
Who wants that?
Yeah, the Duluth model isn't entirely false. Even the people that created it have now come out. One of them has come out and said
retracted, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it one? I thought it was two of them.
At least one of them. I found where at least one of them came out and retracted.
One of them came on and said, we did it too quickly. The methodology was really wonky. It was ideological. We were young. These were different times. It was not a very good idea. Can we forget about this? Can you get my names off the record, please? But it's a bit too late, and now the UN is trying to get it in its guidelines when it comes to sending committees to deal with, what is it again? Help creation of regulations for domestic violence, this sort of thing. So that's a nice prospect.
Well, see, they like it because it's a great way for them to take control over interpersonal relationships.
Well, it's most importantly a great way for them to enforce their own their own paradigm when it comes to that, when it comes to defining interpersonal
relationships.
Sorry, relations. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not so much about ruling over them. It's really just the definition of them that gets a new framework thanks to that, and that's, I believe, it might be even more dangerous than putting regulation over it.
Well, the thing that it'll do is that if you control interpersonal relationships, you control the entire population right there.
Obviously, yes. So, and it starts by giving the proper words and the proper framework to understand it. So, yeah, good job on that. Politically, that's a very clever move.
Okay, so guys, before we go on to, I'm going to let Hyper Chicken finish his question, And then I'm going to have to thank you, Dr. Livingstone, for having come on, and bring on the
You're
next
welcome.
person who wants to talk. So Hyper Chicken, ask your question.
Dr. Livingston, I wanted to ask something going back to France about Emmanuel Macron, because when I watched what little was coming out during the election that wasn't about Marine Le Pen, was talking about Macron, and it seemed to be that he was setting himself up almost as a Napoleonic figure. We talked a lot about French history and culture of empire and military strength. So it seemed like he was, at the same time, he was doing a lot of progressive stuff, also calling back to sort of French traditionalist history, sort of thing French traditionalist like. Is he trying to embody both? Was this just smoke and mirrors? Because he seemed to, from what was coming out of France, he seemed to be trying to set himself up as a kind of heroic leader in that respect.
It's a bit
Is there any
hard to
truth to that?
describe. It's a bit hard to describe. He's really been something else when it comes to communication and goals. During the campaign, what was particularly weird is that, contrary to a handful of other candidates, for the few that followed the election, I would say we had about 3 main candidates that really had sort of a clear project and vision, and that would have been Benoit Hamon, the mainstream left candidate who had an entire platform based on universal income, and sort of his main goal and main talking point was we need to prepare for the future and for a shift in economy regarding automation, etc. So that's a clear program. The second would be Jean-Luc Mélenchon, much more radical left that wanted really a constitutional overhaul in order to restore a bit of domestic sovereignty regarding European regulation. And the third would have been François Fillon, the great loser in all of it, who had a clear program of in-depth reformation regarding union, social regimes, things like that. These were the 3 big losers. The 2 who really make it through, Marine Le Pen and Macron, did not have much of a vision. So that's an odd thing. Macron basically cherry-picked bits of programs that were popular in everyone else's programs. So coming into the election, he didn't have much of an image. That's the odd part. So it shifted quickly. Just the moment he got elected and made his grand appearance in front of the Louvre pyramid, that's when it started to get quite odd. And that's, as you said, when we started to have these sort of odd regalian and Napoleonic vibes from it. However, when it comes to a blend of, say, ambition and progressivism, it could be a way to describe it, yes, but I'm not entirely sure it would be accurate. Especially when it comes to foreign policy, where it's always hard to really get France into a strong position when it comes to foreign policy and bring the sort of, to put it as you say, imperial value from it. As other than nuclear power, we don't have that much of an influence anymore. We are in the permanent Security Council of the UN, yes, but let's not pretend we haven't been sort of aping American decisions ever since the end of the Chirac era, the early 2000s, which was possibly the last time we made a significant move when it comes to foreign policy by not getting into Iraq, this sort of thing. But I don't think it's a very clear-cut thing in this case. Yes, it's true there are a lot of odd elements of ambition when it comes to this, but the reforms do not follow through. It's a lot of very grand communication, very, as you say, Napoleonic postures, but there isn't that much that comes with it.
I just want to get in there and say and point out that I think that this kind of conquering Napoleonic posturing is totally compatible with this kind of one good man, I'll save the women of France,
Oh,
sort of thing.
Well, that's
It
why
absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's been a joke in the entire country to call him the savior or things like that, because it's really a vibe he's trying to give off. Especially, I mean, in that regard, he's been helped in that regard by the second turn, where it was really just him coming to save the day from the evil of the National Front. And let's just say it didn't help a lot when it comes to the political climate, because it resulted in a solid election, a very solid majority in parliament, and then not so much in the Senate. And now the approval ratings are dropping, and he's not taken that much seriously anymore. The cracks in the armors with essentially diversity hires in parliament are starting to show. So
yeah,
It's-
so
well,
it
it's
sounds
why
like
I
it's going
asked
the. It
what you
sounds like
said
it's.
Sorry, you go.
It sounds like it's going the way of Trudeau. And I apologize for cutting short the discussion, Hyper Chicken, and I want to thank you, Dr. Livingstone, for coming on. It's been great to hear. Well, it's been informative to hear about the situation in France, and a little scary.
if Hayden comes in, I'll talk about comic books, because it's been a shit show at Angoulême. This sort of thing is also ridiculous.
Well, if
Comic
we
books
have
has
a
been
little bit,
shit show this year.
Well, it's
If
been a
we-
shit show differently. We don't have something as big as Marvel, so it can be as fun, but some actors are shooting themselves, not in the foot, but in the head. So it's been entertaining to see.
yeah, no doubt. Well, I'm going to thank you again, and if we do have some time after we take the other people who are interested in talking to us, maybe we'll return to the shit show in comics.
Yeah, if I'm not asleep or drunk or both.
Of course. Well, it is New Year's Eve. So thanks
It is
again.
New Year's Eve. I'm alone and I've got rum and vodka, so
Yay!
have a good one, people. Have one on me. Have one on me, Mike. Have one on me, everyone. Oh, and
Way ahead of you.
Just a wee question. It's completely out of topic. It's just something I would like to know. When the Honorable Doge was recovering, I did send a bottle of wine his way. I never knew if it arrived. It's something I brew with my dad. I wanted to know if it came. So
What was the wine referred to? What was it called?
it didn't really have a name. It's something. It's home brewed, homemade with.
Oh yeah, no, that we got it, and he.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, he's saving it for a special occasion.
Oh, let him know. Don't drink it during meals. Drink it before, or maybe with dessert if it's fruity. And yeah, room temperature is good. Fridge temperature is better. And yeah, so he can have one on me as well. And interesting thing, alcohol can be good when fighting cancer, depending on the type of cancer. So,
well, thank you for that, and thank
everyone,
you for
have one on me. Try not to shoot yourself this year. Try to have a good year. I'll try.
Good advice.
So, cheers, and try to stay alive somehow.
Okay,
Goodbye,
great.
everyone.
Goodbye. Okay,
All right,
so I'm going to call.
All right, we got a super chat real quick. Might as well do these in between guests.
Oh Jesus.
Alan,
okay, but actually, I'm actually gonna ask. I'm gonna ask that Undead will come in, but not start talking, because we're gonna have to do the super chat. So get into the room, Undead will. I believe this super chat is for me. So
yes. Alan Hardman gives us 20 English pounds. It says, for Alison to sing out, I am the very model of a modern Major General of information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the facts historical. He hasn't included the fourth line. He just wants the first three from you.
Well, you've already sang it, so now it's just gonna be dumb if
it's for Alison to sing out. You gotta earn your shekels. Come on now.
I am the very modern. I am the very model of a modern Major General. I can't sing, by the way. I have information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical.
Beautiful.
All right. Undead will. Let's see what I'm just going to get to your message. So you want to talk about the nature of the left's activism, which
oops, sorry. I'm terrible at this.
Go ahead. You said it has two states, expansion and focused, and explains why they were acting crazier during Obama than during Trump.
It's
All right.
sort of like the full moon like that. But the sort of noticed is that whenever they have a sort of Democrat in the office, they no longer they start looking for that fight because they're all oppressed and they're all under that sort of fight or flight sort of reflex. So they're always trying to find something new to make their own. That's why we had things during Gamergate, Metalgate, and a lot of just shit stirring crazy during because they were looking for those fights and they had 8 years to find that fight. When Trump became in the office, they started getting a little bit less crazy. You had a bunch of protests in the beginning, but then those started to fizzle out as they lost the energy to keep going at it. They just weren't able to keep up with the stamina of the posters. And I think this sort of goes to explain how the it's how they function for the most part. Like I said, they look for a fight whenever they Democrat in the office because they now have to oppose something that they don't see as institutional because most people aren't informed about congressmen or anything else. They start looking for a fight that's more abstract and around the world. So they go into different communities and sort of try and take them over. Trump, they're focused on Trump. And that explains why there's a little bit less crazy stuff that most people make content over and why some of the schisms that have always sort of existed, the authoritarian versus libertarian, the conservatism versus the liberalism, and every sort of which way it started to go at each other because that's the nature of the sort of community of being anti something, as Dr. Andrew has pointed out. But yeah.
I'd actually like if Hannah's been listening to that, what she thinks of it. She might be.
What? Can you give me a more specific question than that?
Well, Undead Will is talking about how during Obama, people on the left were more aggressive.
They were more expansionist. They were trying to take over more stuff. They were trying to get more communities under their belt because a lot of their power comes from that moral sort of posturing of represent this community and thus I am morally sort of more righteous. It's sort of gaining of more power, and so you see them acting more crazy. Like they'll go after different communities and they'll do a Hail Mary to try and win it over. All the crazy stuff to get them the moral high ground. Anyway.
Okay, just from the perspective of having been involved in LGBT stuff, different things throughout the late 80s until now. From what I've seen, there's been a very slow and steady takeover. And there's been spurts. There's been times when they were able to do it longer or faster or whatever. There's been times where they've been more effective. But I think that this has been something there's been a long game here. And the ability to exploit those communities isn't something that they sort of discovered or went for just when Obama was in power. It's been something that they've done. They've used different methods to do it at different times. So when there are liberals in power, they make an authoritative appeal. When there are non-liberals in power, progressive liberals, by the way, not the classic liberal, but when there are people in power who don't follow the progressive agenda, then they go for more, we're in an emergency, and their rhetoric becomes more hysterical, and it goes from we need to get this done, we need to make a push, we need to work on this, and this is where we are, and blah blah. It goes to everybody's going to die if we don't do this, everybody's going to get raped if we don't do this, they're not going to let you live together if we don't do this, they're not going to let you have a family if we don't do this. And it basically goes from a trenches push to a hysteria, like a bomb shelter push. So it continues the whole time. It's just the language changes is all.
Yeah, that's sort of pointing out, like they change between whether they believe they have that power or they don't.
Right, and
sort of thing. It's not just Obama, but it's more of like just recent example, more of a recent example.
And what you see is it's a lot easier to create hysteria among people who feel that they are in a position as of the underdog. Okay, but at the same time, you also find that. Remember in the previous conversation, I was talking about how feminists will appeal to traditionalists in terms of you got to protect your women, you got to protect your daughters, protect your wives, and stuff like this. They've been doing that the whole time as well. The push against porn, that's a big tool for them in the push against porn. It's a big tool for them in the push for intimate partner and domestic violence and sexual violence law. It's been a big push for them in terms of harsher prison sentences. It's been a big push for them in terms of child support law and alimony law. They've been really successful at tailoring their message to both sides, and a lot of times we miss the way they tailor their message to conservatives because they are thought of as being progressive, and the reality is they're mercenary and they'll go for both sides.
It's sort of the thing that. Oops, sorry.
Just before you go on, I was just going to point out something that someone else has said. I don't know if you know about him, but Ginkgo is someone who's been a fellow traveler for HBR for a long time, and he did point out something about 2017 with all the sort of Me Too accusations, and that it sort of looks like auto cannibalism. The final stage of that sort of expansion you talk about is auto cannibalism. When they sort of hit a barrier, they start eating each other. And that's what you've seen this year is a lot of this sort of group eating each other. They kind of turned on each other a lot this year. The Me Too campaign was largely aimed at people that for the previous 8 years were big parts of the Democrat government and sort of Democrat supporters. So in the previous year, you've seen a lot of destructive infighting and indestructive and imploding and sort of cleaning house almost.
Yeah, it's sort of the sort of the nature of them to always sort of consume their own communities is because
it's the final stage of any revolutionary group is auto cannibalism. They start eating themselves.
It's also that they. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Go ahead.
The one of the things they do is they take whatever community they take over, they immediately they destroy what culture was there, and they start instituting their own.
Yeah, but that always ends in endless periods of cannibalism and recannibalism.
Yeah. No, that's what
happened in the atheist movement. They purged, and then they just kept purging and purging and purging.
Every community, the Black community, the I don't think they've gotten to the Latino community just yet, but they'll get to it eventually. But they've done it Black community.
Into things like Magic the Gathering. There's been big inroads in this year into mainstream sci-fi TV shows and movies. Not very successfully, unfortunately for them. They've been trying to talk about it successfully, but looking at the way they went into video games, they've done a lot of damage and not a lot of good to the whole thing and all of themselves. So yeah, cannibalism is kind of what happens.
I think it's like one of the things about atheism is that it was the first clear sort of like line of know the mark of the beast. You know, this is how they do stuff. This is how they. If you notice, they did that a long time before in the gay community and Black community. Of this is how they sort of act, but there wasn't enough pushback, and there wasn't enough of the communication between outside groups and inside groups of those communities to sort of say this is what they're doing to our community. This is the shit they're doing, you know. And
just
so at the end of it,
aside to Hannah, you said in the gay community they've worked faster and longer for and more successfully. In your opinion, would you say faster or longer is more successful? Because I'm asking for a friend here.
Well, honestly, I've seen it. The long game has been more successful for them. That they incrementally come in. Well, you know, this is actually because they hate women. Like the narrative where they say gay men are discriminated against because society hates women and they're too feminine. When in reality, it has nothing to do with that. It's society hates men that don't serve women, and gay men don't serve women. But and it's that long game has served them in that nobody noticed, you know, or very few people realized that feminists were taking over LGBT interests and that they were pretty much destroying LGBT interests to feed their own basically movement. And it really didn't hit people in LGBT interests until, I would say, God, I can't think of the name of the club that was shot up in Orlando, but when it sort of came out that the feminist-led media wanted to talk more about the straight women that were in there and ignore the fact that the majority of the people killed in there were not straight women. They wanted to ignore the men that were killed.
Weird thing that there were straight women in a gay club.
Well, like, straight women hang out in gay clubs all the time. And honestly, I think it's part of it is they get hit on by lesbians and it makes them feel sexy. And part of it is they like the pretense of being in a safe space, as if being in a straight bar is a dangerous place.
Not only that, they like to be sexually aggressive towards gay men who they are attracted to.
Yes, and they can get away with it because the gay men aren't going to respond. Gay men probably get a lot more sexual harassment from straight women than straight men do.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, just from what I've seen, and like some of them get annoyed by it, and some of them are just like, well, this is par for the course. This is what we deal with, And I'm sitting here looking at it, going, why you put up with that? Well, sometimes they put up with it because they're men, and if they react, they're going to get in trouble for being a man acting inappropriately, aggressively towards a woman.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking. One of the things that you mentioned is that this is related to the infighting that we're seeing today. Do you mean the infighting with the social justice warriors, or infighting within any other community?
A little bit of both. It's like you said earlier, they cannibalize their own, but also within the sort of anti-social justice community, with a lot of what kept it from infighting was that there was a lot of fruit just lying around that you could sort of pick at. It could be high hanging fruit, it could be low hanging fruit, didn't matter. It was all just fruit. And so you had a banquet for everyone. But now that they've become hyper focused, a lot of that fruit has stopped falling to the ground. It's higher up in the tree. And for some people, they sort of, after different groups, they start looking around for something else that they can sort of. It's the nature of how you like a entertainment as even if that entertainment is educational as content is, it's educational about a political subject, but they still need to make the money at the end of the day to keep the lights running, so they go after sort of see what they can get away with at times.
So it ends up being more about within the community itself, drama, and purity testing and stuff like that. Okay, well, I wanted to thank you for coming on. We do have a bit of a queue forming now.
Yeah, there was just one last thing I wanted to two things. A quick statement and a thank you, and a shill within that thank you. I'll try and word it cleverly as this monkey mind can. But the I've noticed with the terms gynocentric is that it has the perfect way to just slide into the same role as patriarchy is how we use it. If it happens, there'll be a divide in the communities because, like, with liberal feminists, they say patriarchy means traditionalism, and the radical feminists, they understand perfectly well what patriarchy means. It means a male-dominated society, and all men are sort of sociopaths. When that role of that word can easily slide into that other role as the same role for patriarchy is to feminist, you will have that sort of divide between the liberal and the believers, the antithetical gynocentric. And if that happens, I kind of want to warn people that these two communities that have now split should never come back together, because those two, the radical and the liberal, feed off each other.
The radical and liberal feminists feed off each other is what you're saying.
And the sort of nature of that term can fill that role if we allow it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And you wanted to have a shill?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you because last time I came on here, I was an actual like nervous wreck. More so than usual. I have booze to temper that, and my channel's Undead Will. I don't upload regularly, but I try with my small band of followers.
Love you, Will.
Yeah.
Love you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Abraham. I'm gonna save that. It's gonna.
Yeah, that's fine. Put it in whatever bank you like.
Oh, it's gonna be the intro. No, I'm kidding.
Okay,
but
well, thank you for coming out and joining us and giving us those insights.
yeah,
Okay, so
a little bit like a hermit.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just a little bit like a hermit, just sitting on the outside, occasionally coming back into town and going, I have brought you a flightless bipedal, and I just have a plucked chicken. I'm sort of like that. I'm the modern day, otherwise known as a shit poster.
Okay, so thank you again for coming on. I want to extend the invitation to Fenrir Wolf to come onto the show channel so we can talk to you. If you would come in, Fenrir Wolf. Oh wait, first of all, let me Doge wants to say something.
Yeah, hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And
welcome to the show, Brian.
Well, thank you. I'm just recovering. Look at my head. You just put me in there. I'm still recovering from the most epic surgery I've ever had in my life, but I didn't want the year to end without coming on at least to say hi to everybody. And wish you guys a very happy New Year, and I hope that you had a great Christmas. And to say hi to Hannah and Mike, because I haven't talked to you guys in what feels like forever.
Word.
So
Hello.
yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm just dropping in real quick. I'm in crazy amount of pain. This is like seriously just this is going into the record books of my life, but yeah, I couldn't let the show go without coming in and saying hi and happy New Year and stuff. And I wanted to say that 2017 was one hell of a year. It was one.
Holy shit.
Yes, 2017 was. You know what? The first half was amazing. And then after VidCon, it was a serious left turn, but it was a very interesting year. That's all I could say. So I'm looking forward to 2018, although I don't know. I just had to say that, that this was this was really something. So I just wanted to come in and say that I love you guys and that I miss doing the show, and I can't wait till I can get back in the saddle, which hopefully will be very soon, and that I hope you guys have a very, very good New Year's. I'm not opening that bottle. I did see that Livingston was on here, and I have his bottle of the bottle of wine that he sent. But that's not for tonight. I have champagne, but I'm saving the bottle for something extra special. So once we get the go ahead on that, then I will pop that sucker. But yes, 2017 was one hell of a current year indeed.
Yeah. I hope that 2018 is a little bit less of may you live in interesting times year, but somehow I think that our particular community will always be living in interesting times.
Absolutely. So
it's not for nothing that's a curse in Chinese.
No,
May
it's
you live in
not.
interesting time.
May you live in interesting times. Well, we definitely do.
Well, 2018 is the year of the dog, so we should have a better year next year.
Oh,
certainly. Okay, well, thank you for coming on, Brian.
Sure, I'm gonna take off now.
Thanks for enduring the pain to come and say hi to us.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back and lay down. So, but I just saw that you were doing this, and I missed the Christmas one. I was gonna do it then too, but I missed that, so I'm just doing it now.
No, I think everybody understands. They understand that this is going to be quite the uphill battle to recover from the surgery. So
yeah. Okay.
And please do enjoy your tie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I got some great gifts. Thanks, guys. I mean, seriously, wow. I'm blown away. The tie. I got the tie. I got the hat, and I got the fully posable Kira Yoshikage action figure with all of the fucking trimmings. So, and actually, that's basically all I got this Christmas. So I'm gonna take that and treasure it. So yeah, thanks so much for those things. That's
No
amazing.
Use them well to heal.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you for coming
Thanks,
on.
guys. Thanks, Mike and Hannah. You guys are kicking ass. I'll see you when. Well, I'll see you soon.
Okay. Well, we'll talk soon.
All right. And French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says, "When your movement is cancer, don't be surprised if it dies of cancer." Yeah, well, it might survive. It might beat cancer.
It might.
So there.
Guys, I'm gonna say goodbye because I gotta take off for work, and I'll get in huge trouble at work if I don't like put on pants and stuff before I go. So
You gotta get those pants on.
cannot work in my pajamas. They get
The
mad.
patriarchy claims another victim.
Bye all. Night.
Bye.
See you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay, and then there was Fenrir Wolf. Okay, so what you sent a message to me and you said you wanted to give us a big thank you and say some stuff. So here's your opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the message, basically, I wanted to say just a big thank you because of the coincidentally related to the shit show drama that was the end of the year. That the live stream in January 2016 that I thought for me went so poorly that it made me look for a job in a call center, which is like the worst job ever. But yeah, and basically learn how to speak more confidently, speak more properly, and it gave me the money I needed to go back to college and be able to patron you now, which I just did tonight.
Yeah, actually, Fenrir Wolf is our newest patron. So he now has access to the patron Discord and all of the lovely shit posting and assorted trimmings that go on in the patron
The not
Discord.
safe for work pages that just make you want to die.
The not safe for work. Well, I don't know if that's as much as the sometimes we put in the
well, usually there's something in there. If you go through them long enough, you eventually find something that just makes you wish you'd not looked.
Oh, that's not really a very good way of selling something. It's a very live.
If you tell people that like that, they have to check it out until they find something. They can't resist looking.
Okay, all right, but the patron chat itself is very friendly. They're very nice people, lots to say, very funny. It's in constant movement. I dread going back in because by the time I go back in, there's probably gonna be another 150 messages. Just the time that just in just about half an hour. It's pretty high volume, but there's always something going on. Lots of different channels, people's cat photos, people's photos of porn. I don't really go into that channel.
Yeah,
but,
it's very well divided up. So if there's a specific thing you want to talk about, there's something. It's probably got its own separate chat. You just go on there and talk about specific things you want to. So it's actually very well divided up into sort of different subheadings. So it's very easy to navigate.
So I hope you enjoy your time there, Fenrir Wolf, and I'm glad that we could have inspired you to get a job in a call center, and then subsequently go back to school, and then I assume you have another job now.
Yes, much more high paying, by the way. I'm a scene technician now.
A scene technician?
Yes. Basically, I work behind the sound booth in the back of the scene during live shows.
Okay, so is that in like a theater?
It's at the school I'm going to. Incidentally, they sort of hired me there. It's basically being a sound technician, lighting technician for the auditorium room that's there.
Okay.
And yeah.
So it's a little bit creative then.
A little, yeah. I mean, I want to go in 3D animation personally. But
3D animation?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what you're training for?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Should so do you create characters and stuff as well, eh?
Yeah.
3D characters, cool. All right. Well, did you have anything additional that you wanted to talk about?
No, aside from the, like I said, coincident. It's sort of coincidental that the last stream that I was on is sort of tangentially related to the shit show that was the drama at the end of the year, because Kraut was there.
Oh.
But yeah, it was Kraut and Karen, and they had, because of me, they went into an argument about education, incidentally.
Okay, so this was an open stream. Was it during the time that Kraut was still fairly small?
Yes, it was at the beginning. It was an open, it was an open stream. It was with Google live streams, and Advertisan was there and talked for like 40 minutes about postmodernism, at least.
Ad, he might make an appearance. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for thanking us for I guess turning your life around.
Yeah. No, it really did. It really did. That live stream turned my life, literally.
Wow. Well, thanks. I'm gonna, if you want to stick around, because and we'll take the next individual, because we're down 2 now, so I think that we can manage to have an extra. So Andrew V, do you want to come in? I can see if I can pull you out, but you're not in the general chat. Pretty sure it's Andrew V who wants to come on next. So if you're hearing this, just come on down. I'll see if you're currently in here and have the ability to go in. I'm not sure. I want to do a shout out to Therapy Snack, who might not actually be isn't actually working at the moment, but he's been helping us by keeping the traffic, by doing basically crowd control in the general, bringing people on as guests. So I just want to do a shout out to him and thank him as I figure out what happened to Andrew V.
In the meantime, Xeranx gives us $20 and says $20 for proof of life of Brian.
Oh, $20 for proof of life of Brian?
I think I see what he did there. And French Honey Badger gives us another $5.
I will point out that they made an entire movie about that, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's the joke. I think that's a joke.
Will probably purchase you the DVD and everything.
Yeah. Oh, Andrew V logged out. Okay. Well, that's too bad. Well, I could read. I could actually read what he had to say. Hello, Allison. First of all, thank you for everything, the whole Honey Badger thing. It's been my source for quality information on modern society and news for several years now, but there's one complaint I have, especially for you personally. You try to explain everything that happens in the world with gynocentrism. Everything is because women of the world are abusing men's desire to protect them. Well, sometimes that is definitely true. Explaining everything with that one explanation is simply simplifying reality. I will tell from experience, the little I have, reality is not simple. There's rarely one explanation for every single thing. It's simply not true. Please try to understand this, or at least read this. Thank you for reading this. Go Badgers. I actually don't think I use gynocentrism to explain everything. I think that is actually a simplification of my approach. And I know I don't have this information out yet, but I am going to be talking about, in fact, I've questioned using gynocentrism to explain everything in a lot of circumstances, because I don't think it really does explain everything. And I mean, much more, something that has more explanatory value is the idea that cultures will use males and females in such a way that allows them to survive. And so I don't really have anything further to add to that, because he's not here to have a conversation about that. And I'm not sure. Is there anybody else who would like to come on and talk to us, who's currently in our Discord waiting to talk to us? If you do want to talk to us, just give me a message in the general channel and I'll bring you on.
I just add in the interim that I don't think it's fair to say you would use gynocentrism to explain everything, because I don't think you've gone out of your way to explain everything.
No,
You
I
explain
really
some
haven't.
things, but not everything.
If you do want to come on, just give me a short heads up on what you want to talk about, and I'll take a look and give you the ability to come in, and then we can cover it. And just give me a short summary of what you want to say. And until then, I guess what do you want to go over the retrospective of popular culture, Hyper Chicken?
Well, yes, I think I started off by saying that it's sort of split into two camps. One has been crowing about 2017 as a great year for diversity in movies and TV and the sort of the entertainment in our lives, and the other one has been a great big wet fart of how so many things from 2016, when this was being quoted about in 2016, have fallen flat in their face. With comic books watching as they almost destroyed the comic book industry, Marvel kind of is a good gauge of how well comic books are going, and they had to cancel a bunch of old things because the financial writing is on the wall this year. So it's been sort of a tale of two different stories in this year. Is if you've I don't know if you've seen it, but I think I put in the chat earlier a weird article called, and I'll see if I can bring it up, From Colossal to Black Mirror: How Sci-Fi Slapped Down Geek Culture's Toxic Masculinity in 2017. So it's sort of one of the two viewpoints, and the other one is sort of the grey reality of it. So, any thoughts on that?
I think that they're full of shit. I don't know if I want to start up an article because we're probably not going to be going for too much longer. I think that it sort of boggles my mind how they simultaneously want to make geek culture out to be this colossus of toxic masculinity at the same time as they're just pathetic losers. So,
well, yeah, but I do notice that if you want to go for the easiest possible parallel, there was this kind of parallel when you see anti-Semitic propaganda of people who are simultaneously colossus monsters controlling everything and kind of weedly, pathetic, effeminate losers who, shrunken, shriveled, old women of men. You've seen sort of anti-Semitic propaganda. It kind of does that. It tries to draw a duality of monsters controlling everything and pathetic weeds that you should feel disgusted by. So,
yeah, it's
sort of any hate target sort of has that duality.
Definitely. You know what? I think that we're probably going to have to pack it up now. I mean, we've done about an hour and a half at least, and it's sort of winding down. Pretty sure that it's now New Year's somewhere. Unfortunately, Sneck has had to go to supper, so we don't have much going on in the back room. And nobody's really stepped up to tell me. Someone said that they wanted to ask a question about postmodernism, general question about postmodernism. And if that individual just wants to put in the general chat channel what question they have about postmodernism, we could discuss it.
Gladly.
Yeah, just give us a heads up on what you want us to talk about.
Okay, Field O'Bears gives us $10. Says, thank you for reading out my life updates over this year. It has been extremely helpful to have an outlet for such things, even though I'm fairly sure you don't care very much. Oh, we kind of do.
What? Well, wait a second. I'm curious where the life updates.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Could you do the name again?
Field O'Bears.
Field of Bears. I've actually not heard of that. I'm not sure who that is, so I can't really say if I. Because the thing is that people change their names about once every 5 days, and I can't really follow all of the various names that they call themselves. So I'm not sure about reading the life updates over the last years, who this refers to. So
I think they're just saying thank you for keeping me up to speed, or what have you.
Oh, okay, all right, no problem. Glad to assist.
Also, that Reeve guy gives us 50 secs and says, "There's Rome too."
There's Rome too. I think this is becoming an in joke now about Rome. I'm actually going to end up talking about Rome a lot more in the coming days, in the coming years and months, or months, maybe not years. So there you go. There will be more Rome on the horizon.
Maybe it's also a reference to the fact that we're always wandering off, roaming around.
Roaming around? I'm roaming around?
Well, it's just constantly going from topic to topic, not sort of going along with everyone else.
These streams tend to be pretty chaotic. All right, Undead Will asked me to bring back Censor Duck. I don't know about that. Censor Duck, I think Censor Duck has had his time. Bring back our duck, huh? Okay, hashtag bring back our duck. Maybe.
You can talk about the last season of *Halt and Catch Fire* if you want, because if you want to go
fire. I don't think anybody wants me to talk about *Halt and Catch Fire*.
You said it was *Halt and Go MGTOW*.
Halton, yeah, no, I might do an analysis of *Halt and Catch Fire* and explain how it's really halt and go your own way, especially with that last scene. I think they were trying to say something, and they were trying to do it in a very hostile environment, and I think they might have been successful if you read it through the lens of what it's actually saying, rather than more deeply than what it's saying on the surface. So I'll go into the analysis. I don't think this means anything to anybody who's just listening and doesn't know what *Halt and Catch Fire* is, but it might mean something when I do the analysis. All right. So how often do these podcast chats occur? Well, this is the first time I've actually created a successful system, aside from Snake slithering out and us having no volunteers in the room to sort of queue up the people who want to come on. So I guess we could try it more often. We'll see. I mean, we're still down a fairly large amount of our productive capacity with Brian, and it's probably not going to go back up until he's available to do it, to take over the stuff that he usually does. It is what it is, right? When you lose one of your producers, you can't produce as much. But we'll see if we can do this a little bit more regularly in the future. And of course, if you enjoy the chat and being able to talk to us, you can always join us on our patron Discord, where you can enjoy chatting with us via text. I'm quite chatty, chat quite a bit. Or you can also enjoy talking to Karen and Hannah and Brian when he comes back, and Prim in person during the after shows. And if you're interested in that, the easiest way to go about it is to go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio, read the different levels, see what appeals to you, choose one. Definitely helps us keep the lights on and continue to be able to do our work. Or you can go to feedthebadger.com. It's a little bit more complicated. You'll have to join the Discord in order to get access to the after shows, and you'll have to talk to us in the customer service channel so we can give you the right rank based on how much you've pledged. But on the other hand, when you go through Feed the Badger, we do get more in the end. And all of this helps us continue to challenge the notion that our society has to run on female victimhood, because that's really what this is about. Female victimhood is a great motivational force, a great organizational force. It puts everybody on the same page. It gets them to set aside their own petty enmities to go and protect the women and slay the dragon. So we need to be able to create a new and different motivational force that doesn't involve ignoring male victims and male vulnerabilities and just kicking men to the curb when they don't serve. So if you want to help us do that, www.feedthebadger.com. I'm going to see what else people are saying in the chat.
Field of Bears gives us another $2. It says, recently changed my name from Ryan Field because pun. French Honey Badger gives us $2 and says, people change their names like they change gender! Exclamation mark.
Jesus Christ.
Rambama 3000 gives us £5 and says nothing. Polaris 589 says, gives us $5, says, Allison, please say we was Romans and shit. Do it.
Okay, I just...
I wonder if anyone's thought to troll this whole new sexualities by coming up with sexuality that they'll call themselves rape sexual and see if
God.
objects.
That's opening a Pandora's box. I want to bring back the actual term for adult male human. There. I want to bring that back. And all of the pronouns that used to be associated with ver versus the gender neutral. Because in English, we used to have completely gender neutral pronouns, and man basically was the gender neutral way of referring to all humans. We got rid of that, and we just gave the gender neutral term to men, sort of like we seem to be giving the gender neutral, we're getting rid of men's bathrooms and just making them gender neutral, and then having the women's bathrooms. I'd like to bring that back. I mean, if we can bring back all of these fucked up pronouns, why not bring back something from, like possibly the most badass time of our history, which was like Old English. What with all the Beowulf and Grendel slaying and stuff. I mean, that having an actual word for adult human male seemed to serve them well. Anyway, that's just a weird aside. So this guy wanted me to say we were Romans and shit.
We was Romans and shit.
We was Romans and shit. We was Romans and shit, and now we're this. Okay, Undead Will says, the nature of the gay community and how its sexual marketplace is similar to that of women's, and every kind of man has a place. Huh. You mean has a place in terms of being sexually desirable. Okay, so Broken Narcissist finally gives us his question about postmodernism. Wondering why postmodernism is degraded when it is what would allow for allowing for alternative vocabularies. We've seen men's rights activists being cucked in favor of uninformed feminist ideology, thus paving of identity makes mono-identities vocabularies. It's abuse of identity politics that makes for bad philosophy and alienates people. I actually sort of agree with this, with sort of questioning this blanket hatred of postmodernism. Oh my God, I felt the re from Ad Verison. I felt it. It was as if 1,000 re's called out and were suddenly silenced. I think that there's a lot of actual value in the postmodernist thinkers. I think they correctly identified some of the problems of the modern era and some of the psychological problems, some of the ennui, and some of the things that we need to actually deal with. And then they went completely south when they decided on a solution in social justice and feminism.
It's a weird thing that if you read it, I don't want to offend anyone, but it's almost superficially similar to Marx. Is that he was an okay analyst. He went completely south when he came up with the most loopy ways of solving problems, which were just heinous. So I can sort of see the similarity there, that you can sort of see that the analysis has some useful stuff. It's in the ideas of what to do about it that it goes completely batty.
So DC Frank says, to me, man equal member of the human species, but since we're dimorphic species, needed a way to identify males and females. While the term would still identify either sex as a member of the human species, so man and woman, only social justice ascribe a rank to those words. Well, unfortunately, there is something happening linguistically way back when you take the gender neutral term and use it to refer to a gender specific group, namely adult biological category, adult human males, and then retain the gender specific term for women. So, I mean, linguistically, at some point in time, we decided we did not need to give men their own gender identity, essentially. We just subsumed it into the general word for a gender neutral adult. Now, there must be something behind that psychology, because it doesn't happen in every single linguistic system. It's basically just ours. There is a distinct word for adult human male in most languages except for ours. And we used to have a distinct word for adult human male, but then it fell out of use. There's a reason why that happened. And it doesn't really, I mean, you can say, lots of people say, oh, that's a feminist type argument. Well, the issue is, that's a thought terminating cliche to just simply title an argument feminist and say, therefore it's wrong. Well, the problem with feminist arguments is they aren't valid. They aren't logical or rational, and they don't relate to reality. The truth is that this happened. We had a specific term for adult human male, and then it got subsumed into the gender neutral term. We got rid of it. At the same time, as we're seeing a lot of other social phenomenon, like this idea that men are defined by service, chivalry and service to women. So, you know, I think it has some merit to look at it.
I think you've also mentioned that around about the same time, male children stopped being referred to as children and started being referred to as servants.
Well, girl was the original term for both a male. It was just a term for a child. Boy actually literally means servant. So we kept the term for a child for girls, for female children, and we applied the name for servant to male children. It's like a lot of this stuff is interesting, because what is the social milieu for why we would do something like that? You know, and why would we create this system? And the same issue, there may be the same issue with Romance languages as well. If they're based on Latin definitely has a specific term for an adult male human, and that term is ver.
As French Honey Badger told us for $5. By the way, virtue comes from Latin for men. Virtue is Roman's idea of masculinity.
Yeah.
In French, homme can mean adult male and humans.
Yeah, but when we're talking about Romance languages, we're talking about languages that were derived, I believe, from Latin. I can be corrected on that. So they're derived from a language that had a specific term for adult human male, and then they lost it for whatever reason. Same thing happened in English, although we're not quite as derived from Latin. Although some people have proposed that we might be a pigeon, or like I don't know how to say this word, but a version of Latin that arose organically rather than out of like more of an academic institution. All right, so I'm gonna. There's a lot more people who've spoken. Broken Narcissist says postmodernism is a solution, but has been abused. I wouldn't call postmodernism a solution. I would call it a set of interesting topics. Okay, so Dr. Livingstone, I presume, says, if men are people too, does that mean people are men too? Let's see. I mean, this is probably really boring to listen to. I'm just trying to find additional stuff that people have said. Okay, so Undead Will says, because men were expected to be servants to the family unit. Urban Hermit says, Namaste. In response to all of the GQs and GFs and other non-binaries who insist that we read their minds to know what pronouns they prefer, I have adopted the deity as my personal pronoun. From this point forward, I shall be my God, my Lord, O God, the divine, or simply the deity, whenever I'm referred to in any form of conversation by strangers. Those who know me may be granted the privilege of merely referring to my familiar pronoun of master and genuflecting in my presence, as opposed to all others who will be required to prostrate themselves and cower in my presence. There's a precedent for this in the religious archetypes all over the world. The Hindu may recognize many gods. Buddhists recognize no gods. Zen says that the inside of all of us is the same God living over and over again. Failure to properly identify my divinity and my godliness, despite the fact that I present as a normal human, will be considered an offense against the deity and a blasphemy of the highest order. This argument that I should hence refer to women presenting as women as he, or men presenting as men as she, or anyone adopting they as their preferred pronoun, who also argue that failure to read their minds on this issue is offensive without first referring to my chosen pronouns of the deity, on such statements will be wholly ignored. Excuse me. To the rest of society, if you look like a guy, you are a he. If you look like a girl, you are a she. If you call me by my preferred holy pronoun and prostrate yourself before me, then you can ask me to correctly address your pronouns. Political correctness is taken to the extreme isn't personal choice, it's personal aggression. Your argument that it is anything other than passive-aggressive drama designed to give you an excuse to hate or belittle others simply because you hate or belittle yourself, but cannot accept that it is entirely a you issue does not stand up to logic. That's very cute. I think we should all do that. Let's all start insisting everybody refer to us as the master.
Or the doctor.
Or the doctor.
Well, that was something that Justicar does. He everywhere he goes, when they have a personal pronoun thing, he puts down his personal pronoun as Massa, M-A-S-S-A. Everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to start shutting this down a little bit. I'm getting a little tired. Yeah, I know. Oh no. But it's like, I'm actually dealing with some wicked exhaustion, post horrible flu exhaustion or anemia. So I'm probably going to go to bed, actually. So it was nice having you guys. Thank you for joining us, Mike. Thank you for joining us, Hyper Chicken. Thank you to everybody who sent a, I'm going to cough again. Who sent through a text chat. And again, if you want to join us permanently as our guest, be our guest on the Patreon Discord, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. It's the quickest way to get in there and get your rank. If you do not like Patreon, go to Feed the Badger and you can pledge monthly there. And we'll get you in one way or another. One way or another, gonna get you. Okay, this is getting ridiculous and I can't sing, so take us out, Mike. Gonna get you. Gonna find you. I don't know, what's the next lyric?
One way or another, I'm gonna win you. I'm gonna win you some way or another.
That's got to be a rape anthem, right?
Yeah, one way or another, I'm gonna win.
Debbie Harry was writing about a stalker that was constantly sending letters to her.
I'm gonna find you and get you. Isn't there find you and get you in there somewhere?
Yeah. That's what Debbie Harry was writing about. She actually had a stalker that was sending her letters that said roughly that sort of stuff in it.
One way or another, I'm gonna get you. I'll get you. I'll get you.
Oh, never mind.
All right.
Mitch has joined us quite late on. Mitch gives us $2. Says don't mind me if I join in. And by the way, Livingston, in pontifical disguise, wants me to say, "Free Spongolia now." So
Spongolia.
I just did.
And all praise to the white woman.
Yes.
Oh my God! Yes, all praise to the white woman.
Tune in tomorrow for the
white woman.
for the latest episode of The Ragening, where we.
No.
You must see it. This one is gold.
The white woman. The white woman loves us all. We are all one within the white woman. We should eat of her delicate flesh and drink of her sweet nectar of life, and be praised and put praise upon her, for the white woman is life and all things that are good. And please just fucking close out this freaking show, because I'm just gonna keep talking bullshit. And the white woman, she is ethereal like a cloud, yet grounded and
like a ground cloud.
massive, like a ground cloud. But she's not she's not like fog. She's like A fog that lifts your spirits and opens your mind and reveals the world to your third eye. So
She is
all praise the
bold.
white woman.
She is bold yet subtle. She is classical yet non-traditional. She is up yet down.
She is all things the white woman. So
At
let us all be
once.
joined in praise of her. Okay, have you shut this off yet, Mike?
No, this is gold.
No, this isn't gold. This is me just fucking farting around.
She is
Oh,
gold
but-
yet tin.
She is gold, yet hard as diamond, and supple and malleable as pewter. She is as useful as ABS plastic, but you would never want to throw her out. She is the white woman. She touches all of us. She binds all of us in the force of her gracious, gracile, yet forceful beauty that is
Inviting yet frigid.
inviting yet totally not
Inaccessible.
inviting. Inaccessible.
Desired by ogres.
Woman-
Ogres everywhere.
Ogres, yes, you gotta fight the ogres, because the ogres might be touching your white womans. Might be in there, rustling through her bits and touching the tender parts that you would prefer that it not be touched by fat green sausage fingers.
The only antidote to the pure evil and disgustingness that is ogres, yet the only magnet to ogres to draw them out.
Yeah, well, exactly, though. Not only is the white woman the most vulnerable creature on the planet, she is also eternal, invulnerable, completely impervious to any kind of possible attack, but completely vulnerable at the same time. Eternal, never dying, but always in the process of wasting away.
She can shatter mountains with a smile, yet is always under attack.
Yes, exactly. She could strike you dead with a wink of her eye, but she needs you to protect her from the ogres and their green sausage fingers getting into her tender parts. Okay,
In short,
fucking end this.
Crazily crazy video.
All right. See you tomorrow, guys. Well, you can see us tomorrow, and we will stop talking